Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the live studios here in Govardhan. Here in Keshavari Das Goswami's room, the famous room that everybody so far that's come has told me it's the best room in the universe. Lucky me. And lucky everybody else too. So we welcome all of you who are out in cyberspace. Now, we've had a little bit of a technical difficulty. We haven't figured out why yet, but the phone is not allowing us to do a live stream. So this is not a live stream. We're going to be recording this and then posting it onto Facebook. So be patient with this while we work this out. There's somebody here in Govardhan who definitely can help us out, but he's not here right now, and I'm trying to get a hold of him and fix it. We do have an internet connection, both in the phone that we normally use, the hotspot, and the phone's okay. But there's a lot of people out in Govardhan right now between Ekadasi and Gaur Purnim in Kartik is the biggest time of the year. And especially the Gaur Purnim, the last day of Kartik, will be the biggest day of the year, second biggest day of the year. First day of the year is Guru Purnima. So, yeah, just be patient with us, and we'll be off and running. We are off and running, but you'll be able to watch it, as soon as it's comfortable for you. So let's start. We'll read the Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram, text 412 to 416, from the Sri Krishna Lila Stava, Srila Sanatana Goswami's 107th out of 108 obeisances that he made to the Vrindavan Lila pastimes of Krishna in this very wonderful book, Sri Krishna Lila Stava. And it goes like this: Sarva Shastra Dipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnanya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Srimad Bhagavata Prabho Kalidvandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshaksharaya Te Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Mannistaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu, sadhuta dayin, adino chichitakara, hanamun chugadachin mam, premnarit katayospura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please, never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, here we are in the third canto, 11th chapter. We're beginning with text 18. Maitreya Muni is continuing to answer the questions of Vidura, and we've heard Brahma's prayers for creative energy. We've heard Garbhodakavaya Vishnu's response to Lord Brahma and giving him benedictions so that he could serve in such a way that he could create the universe and not become proud. And now we're hearing about the divisions of the creation. We're actually hearing about the beginning of the creation in one of the days of Brahma. So lucky us. We're finding out things that the scientists have been trying to do for hundreds of years, and they're still completely bewildered. But we happen to be hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is, by the way, Vijnana. Vijnana means realized knowledge. It's not somebody's speculation about what it might be, or could be, or should be. It is actually what happened from eyewitness accounts. It goes like this. Text 18. Maitreya said, O Vidura, the 4 millenniums are called Satya. He's talking about time now. That's the place where he is. He's talking about time and how it works. Maitreya said, O Vidura, the 4 millenniums are called the Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali Yugas. The aggregate number of years of all these combined is equal to 12,000 years of the demigods. Purport. The years of the demigods are equal to 360 years of humankind. As will be clarified in the subsequent verses, 12,000 of the demigod years, including the transitional periods, which are called Yuga Sandhyas, comprise the total of the aforementioned 4 millenniums. Thus the aggregate of the above-mentioned 4 millenniums is 4,320,000 years. Text 19. The duration of the Satya millennium equals 4,800 years of the demigods. The duration of the Treta millennium equals 3,600 years of the demigods. The duration of the Dwapara Yuga millennium equals 2,400 years, and that of the Kali millennium is 1,200 years of the demigods. Purport. As aforementioned, 1 year of the demigods is equal to 360 years of the human beings. The duration of the Satya Yuga is therefore 4,800 times 360, or 1,728,000 years. The duration of the Treta Yuga is 3,600 times 360, or 1,296,000 years. The duration of the Dwapara Yuga is 2,400 times 360, or 864,000 years. And at last, the Kali Yuga is 1,200 times 360, or 432,000 years. Text 20. The transitional periods before and after every millennium, which are a few hundred years, as aforementioned, are known as Yuga Sandhyas, or the conjunctions of 2 millenniums, according to the expert astronomers. In those periods, all kinds of religious activities are performed. Text 21. O Vidura, in the Satya millennium, mankind properly and completely maintained the principles of religion. But in other millenniums, religion gradually decreased by 1 part, as irreligion was proportionately admitted. Purport. Could you shut the doors? In the Satya millennium, complete execution of religious principles prevailed. You got to push it. You got to push it till it's all the way closed. It's designed to keep out the noise. Purport. In the Satya millennium, complete execution of religious principles prevailed. Gradually, the principles of religion decreased by 1 part in each of the subsequent millenniums. In other words, at present there is 1 part religion and 3 parts irreligion. Therefore, people in this age are not very happy. 22. Outside of the 3 planetary systems, Svarga, Martya, and Patala, The 4 yugas multiplied by 1,000 comprise 1 day on the planet of Brahma. A similar period comprises a night of Brahma, in which the creator of the universe goes to sleep. Purport. When Brahma goes to sleep in his night time, the 3 planetary systems below Brahmaloka are all submerged in the water of devastation. In his sleeping condition, Brahma dreams about Garbhodakashaya Vishnu and takes instruction from the Lord for the rehabilitation of the devastated area of space. Text 23. After the end of Brahma's night, the creation of the 3 worlds begins again in the daytime of Brahma, and they continue to exist through the life durations of 14 consecutive Manus, or fathers of mankind. At the end of the life of purport, at the end of the life of each Manu, there are shorter dissolutions also. Text 24. So Brahma's kept pretty busy. You know, when he gets up in the morning, we just have to brush our teeth, you know, put on our tilak, our clothes, and he's got to recreate part of the universe. So anybody who's hankering to be Brahma, you might want to think twice. Translation. Each and every Manu enjoys a life of a little more than 71 sets of 4 millenniums. Purport. The duration of life of a Manu comprises 71 sets of 4 millenniums as described in the Vishnu Purana. The duration of life of one Manu is about 852,000 years in the calculation of the demigods, or in the calculation of human beings, 306,720,000 years. That's the lifetime of a Manu. So one thing that just stands out when you start to read this carefully and systematically is just how organized the universe is. So why should we accept, you know, the conclusions of the materialistic speculators that everything's just happening by chance? I mean, everywhere you look, you see order. Even when you go into the atom, you see order. You go in with microscopes, you know, and you see order. That order is allowing the high-tech people to use guys and let them do the work for them and all these kinds of things. But how that's happening? If things are not organized, how are things happening? So just see the power of the illusory energy that's it's convinced us that everything's just going on haphazardly. And that's what the Shastra says, that the Lord's power of His intelligence and His energies is so powerful that they seem to be going on automatically, even though there's an intelligence behind them, organizing the whole thing. That makes complete sense. I remember when I heard this, I said, I'm in. Because every kind of question that I answered on this level, from any religionist or so-called high New Age spiritualist, he didn't have any answers at all. Couldn't answer one thing when it comes to this. And now we're hearing the details of how this place is organized. And when you look out at the world, you see, yeah, that's what it is. That's the way it is. At least you see the principle in front of your eyes. So this means that it's faith, but it's not blind faith. And as you assimilate this information and learn to live according to the principles that are given to us by this scripture, then that faith turns into something else. It turns into realization, and then we can see it for ourselves. And there's no question then of knocking us off the rails, as we can so easily get knocked off the rails by the material energy without this knowledge. So it's essential. The first 9 cantos of the Bhagavatam are essential to assimilate before you go to the 10th canto and try to absorb yourself or dwell there in the 10th canto in order to find out who you are in the spiritual world. Text 25. After the dissolution of each and every Manu, the next Manu comes in order along with his descendants, who rule over the different planets. But the 7 famous sages and demigods like Indra and their followers, such as the Gandharvas, all appear simultaneously with Manu. Purport. There are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma, and each of them has different descendants. 26. In the creation, during Brahma's day, the 3 planetary systems, Swarga, Martya, and Patala, revolve, and the inhabitants, including the lower animals, human beings, demigods, and pitas, appear and disappear in terms of their fruitive activities. 27. In each and every change of Manu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears by manifesting his internal potency in different incarnations as Manu and others. Thus he maintains the universe by discovered power. That means revealed knowledge. Text 28. At the end of the day, under the significant portion of the mode of darkness, the powerful manifestation of the universe merges in the darkness of night. By the influence of eternal time, the innumerable living entities remain merged in that dissolution, and everything is silent. Purport. This universe is an explanation of the night of Brahma. Purport. This verse is an explanation of the night of Brahma, which is the effect of the influence of time in touch with an insignificant portion of the modes of material nature in darkness. The dissolution of the 3 worlds is effected by the incarnation of darkness, Rudra, represented by the fire of eternal time which blazes over the 3 worlds. These 3 worlds are known as Bhuva and Swa, Patala, Martya, and Swargaloka and Swarga. The innumerable living entities merge into that dissolution, which appears to be the dropping of the curtain of the scene of the Supreme Lord's energy, and so everything becomes silent. Text 9. Just like when you go to sleep at night, everything appears to go silent. When the night of Brahma ensues, all the 3 worlds are out of sight, and the sun and the moon are without glare, just as in the due course of an ordinary night. Purport. It is understood that the glare of the sun and moon disappear from the sphere of the 3 worlds, but the sun and the moon themselves do not vanish. They appear in the remaining portion of the universe, which is beyond the sphere of the 3 worlds. The portion of this in dissolution remains without sun rays or moon glow. It all remains dark and full of water, and there are indefatigable winds, as explained in the following verses. Text 30. The devastation takes place due to the fire emanating from the mouth of Sankarsana, and thus great sages like Bhrigu and other inhabitants of Maharloka transport themselves to Janaloka, which, being distressed by the warmth of the blazing fire which rages through the 3 worlds. Could you make a note? I want to find out whether Maharloka, the residents of Maharloka, transport themselves to Janaloka, or whether Janaloka transport themselves to Maharloka. That may be a mistake. Text 31. At the beginning of the devastation, all the seas overflow, and hurricane winds blow very violently. Thus the waves of the seas become ferocious, and in no time at all the three worlds are full of water. Purport. It is said that the blazing fire from the mouth of Sankarshan rages for 100 years of the demigods, or 36,000 human years. Then for another 36,000 years there are torrents of rain, accompanied by violent winds and waves, and the seas and oceans overflow. These reactions of 72,000 years are the beginning of the partial devastation of the three worlds. People forget all these devastations of the worlds and think themselves happy in the material progress of civilization. This is called Maya, or that which is not. Text 32. The Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, lies down in the water on the sea of Ananta, with his eyes closed, and the inhabitants of the Janaloka planets offer their glorious prayers unto the Lord with folded hands. So that must be right. You can erase that note. It must be right, because he wouldn't make that mistake twice. Purport. We should not understand the sleeping condition of the Lord to be the same as our sleep. Here the word Yoga Nidra is specifically mentioned, which indicates that the Lord's sleeping condition is also a manifestation of his internal potency. Whenever the word yoga is used, it should be understood to refer to that which is transcendental. In the transcendental stage, all activities are always present, and they are glorified by prayers of great sages like Bhrigu. Text 33. Thus, the process of the exhaustion of the duration of life exists for every one of the living beings, including Lord Brahma. One's life endures for only 100 years in terms of the times in the different planets. Purport. Every living being lives for 100 years in terms of the times in different planets for different entities. These 100 years of life are not equal in every case. The longest duration of 100 years belongs to Brahma. But although the life of Brahma is very long, it expires in the course of time. Brahma is also afraid of his death, and thus he performs devotional service to the Lord, just to release himself from the clutches of the illusory energy. Animals, of course, have no sense of responsibility. But even humans who have developed a sense of responsibility while away their valuable time without engaging in devotional service to the Lord, they live merrily, unafraid of impending death. This is the madness of human society. The madman has no responsibility in life. Similarly, a human being who does not develop a sense of responsibility before he dies is no better than the madman who tries to enjoy material life very happily without concern for the future. It is necessary that every human being be responsible in preparing himself for the next life. Even if he has a duration of life like that of Brahma, the greatest of all living creatures within the universe. 34. The 100 years of Brahma's life are divided into two parts, the first half and the second half. The first half of the duration of Brahma's life is already over, and the second half is now current. In other words, Brahma is about 50 years old. Purport. The duration of 100 years in the life of Brahma has already been discussed in many places of this work, and it is described in Bhagavad Gita 8.17 also. 50 years of the life of Brahma are already over, and 50 years are yet to be completed. Then, for Brahma also, death is inevitable. 35. In the beginning of the first half of Brahma's life, there was a millennium called Brahma Kalpa, wherein Lord Brahma appeared. The birth of the Vedas was simultaneous with Brahma's birth. Purport. According to Padma Purana, Prabhasa Kanda, in 30 days of Brahma, many kalpas take place, such as the Varaha Kalpa and Pitri Kalpa. 30 days make 1 month of Brahma, beginning from the full moon to the disappearance of the moon. 12 such months complete 1 year, and 50 years complete 1 pararda, or 1/2 the duration of the life of Brahma. The Shweta Vraha appearance of the Lord is the first birthday of Brahma. The birth date of Brahma is in the month of March, according to the Hindu astronomical calculation. This statement is reproduced from the explanation of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Text 36. The millennium which followed the first Brahma millennium is known as the Padmakalpa, because in that millennium the universal lotus flower grew out of the navel reservoir of water of the personality of Godhead, Hari. Purport. The millennium following the Brahmakalpa is known as the Padmakalpa because the universal lotus grows in that millennium. The Padmakalpa is also called the Pitrikalpa in certain Puranas. Text 37. O descendant of Bharat, the first millennium in the second half of the life of Brahma is also known as the Varaha millennium because the personality of Godhead appeared in that millennium as the hog incarnation. Purport. The different millenniums known as the Brahma, Padma and Varaha Kalpas appear a little puzzling for the layman. There are some scholars who think these kalpas to be one and the same. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the Brahma Kalpa in the beginning of the first half appears to be the Padma Kalpa. We can, however, simply abide by the text and understand that the present millennium is in the second half of the duration of the life of Brahma. In other words, there's 2 appearances of Lord Varaha. Text 38. The duration of the 2 parts of Brahma's life, as above mentioned, is calculated to be equal to 1 nimesha, less than a second. Shall I read that again? The duration of the 2 parts of Brahma's life, as above mentioned, is calculated to be equal to 1 nimesha, less than a second, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchanging and unlimited and is the cause of all causes of the universe. So everybody's crying out, God is great, but they have no idea how great He is, and therefore the love cannot be that deep. If you can hear this and accept it, and then realize it, and imagine how deep your love for God could be. The great sage Maitreya has given a considerable description of the time of different dimensions, beginning from the atom up to the duration of the life of Brahma. Now he attempts to give some idea of the time of the unlimited personality of Godhead. He just gives a hint of his unlimited time by the standard of the life of Brahma. The entire duration of the life of Brahma is calculated to be less than a second of the Lord's time. And it is explained in the Brahma Samhita for as follows. Now just think about this. The whole duration of Brahma's life, according to our calculation of human time, is 311 trillion, 80 billion years. That's less than a second for Krishna. Yasyakani vashita kalamatavalamvya jivanti loma bilajad jagadandanatvaha Vishnur mahansa ihayasya kala vishesho govindamari purusham tamaham bhajami. I worship Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, whose plenary portion is Mahavishnu. All the heads of the innumerable universes, the Brahmas, live only by taking shelter of the time occupied by one of his breaths. The impersonalists do not believe in the form of the Lord, and thus they would hardly believe in the Lord sleeping. Their idea is obtained by a poor fund of knowledge. They calculate everything in terms of man's capacity. They think that the existence of the Supreme is just the opposite of active human existence. Because the human being has senses, the Supreme must be without sense perception. Because the human being has a form, the Supreme must be formless. And because the human being sleeps, the Supreme must not sleep. Srimad Bhagavatam, however, does not agree with such impersonalists. It is clearly stated herein that the Supreme Lord rests in Yoga Nidra, as previously discussed. And because he sleeps, naturally, he must breathe. And the Brahma Samhita confirms that within his breathing period, innumerable Brahmas take birth and die. That means there are innumerable universes. There is complete agreement between Srimad Bhagavatam and the Brahma Samhita. Eternal time is never lost along with the life of Brahma. It continues, but it has no ability to control the Supreme Personality of Godhead because the Lord is the controller of time. Are you following?
Trying.
Something? In the spiritual world, there is undoubtedly time, but it has no control over activities. Time is unlimited, and the spiritual world is also unlimited, since everything there exists on the absolute plane. Text 39. Haribo! We're in the middle of a recording here. So you have to... Hare Krishna. Haribo. Eternal time is certainly the controller of different dimensions, from that of the atom up to the super divisions of the duration of Brahma's life. But nevertheless, it is controlled by the Supreme. Time can control only those who are body conscious, even up to the Satyaloka, or the other higher planets of the universe. Text 40, there's that one verse, remember that famous verse, which I don't remember the Sanskrit, but the rising and setting of the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone except for pure devotee of the Lord. That doesn't mean we don't get old, and the body doesn't get old, but we don't. That's the secret. Even if you're suffering in old age, you're happy. Text 40. This phenomenal material world is expanded to a diameter of 4 billion miles as a combination of 8 material elements transformed into 16 further categories within and without, as follows. Purport. As explained before, the entire material world is a display of 16 diversities and 8 material elements. The analytical studies of the material world are the subject matter of Sankhya philosophy. The first 16 diversities are the 11 senses and the 5 sense objects, and the 8 elements are the gross and subtle matter, namely earth, water, fire, air, and sky, mind, intelligence, and ego. All these combined together are distributed throughout the entire universe, which extends diametrically to 4 billion miles. Besides this universe of our experience, there are innumerable other universes. Some of them are bigger than the present one, and all of them are clustered together under similar material elements as described below. So Prabhupada used to give the example that, and Shastra also says, that if you were to look at the whole creation, which means all the universes combined together, it would look like a cluster of foam bubbles. Text 41. And those cluster of foam bubbles are covering the spiritual sky, like a cloud. You look at the sky and you see a cloud, you don't see the blue sky, but it's there.
A lot of Brahmins.
A lot of Brahmans and a lot of sky.
Yeah.
And that sky is Brahman. So everything's resting. When Krishna says in the Gita, Matak Paratanam Nanya Kinchidasti Nanjana Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Mani Gana Iva. Everything's resting on me as pearls are strung on a thread. When you string pearls on a thread, you don't see the thread anymore. You just see the pearls if they're strung properly. So everything's resting on the Brahman. And the Brahman is emanating from Krishna.
So his entire body is made of this.
Yes.
You can't see.
Yes. But it's not that he loses his body.
Yeah.
That's what the impersonalists think. The example is given in Shastra that when you make thread from cotton, you no longer can see the cotton, but it's there in the thread. And then when you make a cloth out of the thread, you can no longer see the thread, you see the cloth.
Yes.
So in that way, Krishna's energy is permeating everything.
Wow.
Text 41.
So deep.
The layers or elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before. And all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. Purport. The coverings of the universes are also constituted of the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and each is 10 times thicker than the one before. The first covering of the universe is earth, and it is 10 times thicker than the universe itself. If the universe is 4 billion miles in size, then the size of the earthly covering of the universe is 4 billion miles times 10. This will expand your consciousness. Just trying to think of this, just trying to accommodate these thoughts, expands your consciousness. The covering of them, you accept it, boy. The covering of water is 10 times greater than the earthly covering. The covering of the fire is 10 times greater than the watery covering. The covering of air is 10 times greater than that of the fire. The covering of ether is 10 times greater than that of the air, and so on. So the whole universe is just like a little tiny thing like this, compared to the coverings. And here we are. And here we are.
So we're inside that.
Yeah.
And that's the material
Yeah.
covering.
The cosmic manifestation.
Wow.
And each one of the seeds of those universes is coming out of one of the hair holes of Mahavishnu. That's how many universes there are.
And Krishna's bigger than that.
Krishna's source of that. The dimensions of the spiritual planets are immeasurable. You can't. They give some ideas, but it's just to give you an idea. You can't calculate it. Okay. The universe is within the coverings of matter appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings. And the number of universes is unknown even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universes. And we think that we can control? We think we're God? Hello? Wake up, sleeping souls. Text 42. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is therefore said to be the original cause of all causes. Thus, the spiritual abode of Vishnu is eternal without a doubt, and it is also the abode of Mahavishnu, the origin of all manifestations. Purport. Lord Mahavishnu, who is resting in Yoga Nidra on the causal ocean and creating innumerable universes by his breathing process, only temporarily appears in the Mahatattva for the total manifestation of the material worlds. He is a plenary portion of Lord Sri Krishna, and thus, although he is non-different from Lord Krishna, his formal appearance in the material world as an incarnation is temporary. The original form of the personality of Godhead is actually the Sarupa, or real form, and he eternally resides in the Vaikuntha world, Vishnu Loka. The word Mahatmana is used here to indicate Mahavishnu, and his real manifestation is Lord Krishna, who is called Parama, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Ishwarak Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Adir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. The Supreme Lord is Krishna, the original personality of Godhead known as Govinda. His form is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and he is the original cause of all causes. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 3rd canto, 11th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Calculation of Time from the Atoms. Haribo, Haribo. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Haribo. Okay, here we go. Chapter 12, Creation of the Kumaras and Others. Text 1. Sri Maitreya said, O learned Vidura, so far I have explained to you the glories of the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his feature of Kala. Now you can hear from me about the creation of Brahma, the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge. So what we've heard about so far is the Sarga, the creation of Vishnu. Text 2. Now we're going to hear about the creation of Brahma within each universe. Brahma first created the nascent engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. Purport. Now one thing we should remember now is that the Vedas appeared simultaneous with Brahma. That means that it is not part of the Visarga, it's eternal. The Vedas are eternal sound and they are co-eternal with Krishna. And everything, all the codes that give direction for how to create the world, maintain it, and destroy it are all given in the Vedas. And that's how Brahma becomes enlightened, by Krishna, by receiving the Vedas. Purport. Before the factual creation of the living entities in different varieties of species, the conditions under which a living being in the material world has to live were created by Brahma. Now you see how brilliant this is? The conditions are being created first that allow the living being to live in the material world. Without these conditions, you couldn't live in this material world. You couldn't think that you belong here. We'll read this again. This is a very important verse. Extremely important verse. Sasar jagrenda tamisram ata tamisram adikrit mahamoham chamoham cha tamas chagyana vritaya. Translation. Brahma first created the nascent engagements. That means engagements in ignorance. This is what allows us to stay in the material world, to think that we belong here. Self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. Purport. Before the factual creation of the living entities in different varieties of species, the conditions under which a living being in the material world has to live were created by Brahma. Unless a living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life. Therefore, the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's real identity. And by forgetting one's real identity, one is sure to be afraid of death. Although a pure living soul is deathless and birthless. This false identification with material nature is the cause of false ownership of things, which are offered by the arrangement of superior control. Who can write like this? Who can write like this? So clear. The most deep philosophical understandings are being just laid, just like, just opening up a proclamation from the king or something, and then, or unzipping a file, unzipping a. It's too much. Wonderful. This false identification with material nature is the cause of false ownership of things which are offered by the arrangement of superior control. All material resources are offered to the living entity for his peaceful living and for the discharge of the duties of self-realization in conditioned life. But due to false identification, the conditioned soul becomes entrapped by the sense of false ownership of the property of the Supreme Lord. It is evident from this verse that Brahma himself is a creation of the Supreme Lord. And the 5 kinds of nations which condition the living entities in material existence are creations of Brahma. It is simply ludicrous to think the living entity to be equal with the Supreme Being, when one can understand that the conditioned souls are under the influence of Brahma's magic wand. Patanjali also accepts that there are 5 kinds of nations, as mentioned herein. Text 3. Seeing such a misleading creation as a sinful task, Brahma did not feel much pleasure in his activity. And therefore he purified himself by meditation on this personality of Godhead. Then he began another term of creation. Well, the main thing is not that I'm just over it. How am I going to get purified from this? I got to meditate on Krishna.
Yeah.
So that's the process for getting free from material contamination and all these the creation that causes ignorance and suffering and anger and all these things. Is meditation on Krishna.
It's like when Arjuna didn't want to fight.
Yeah, same thing.
Find out at the end of the Gita that's his dharma.
Yeah. Purport. Although he created the different influences of nations, Lord Brahma was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task. But he had to do it because most of the conditioned souls wanted it to be so. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that He is present in everyone's heart and is helping everyone to either remember or forget. The question may be raised, why the Lord, who is all merciful, helps one to remember and another to forget? Actually, His mercy is not exhibited in partiality towards one and enmity towards another. The living entity, as part and parcel of the Lord, is partially independent because he partially possesses all the qualities of the Lord. Anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down towards nations, the all-merciful Lord first of all tries to protect him from the trap. But when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. The Lord helps the falling living entity glide down to the lowest point, just to give him the chance to see if he is happy by misusing his independence. Almost all the conditioned souls who are rotting in the material world are misusing their independence, and therefore 5 kinds of nations are imposed upon them. As an obedient servitor of the Lord, Brahma creates all these as a matter of necessity, but he is not happy in doing so, because a devotee of the Lord naturally does not like to see anyone falling down from his real position. Persons who do not care for the path of realization get full facilities from the Lord for executing their proclivities to the fullest extent, and Brahma helps in that procedure without fail. So it's like, this is the answer to the question, how is it possible that somebody can take a package of cigarettes, and now they have, I don't know if you know this, but in England, their packages are like completely, the whole package is grotesquely, describing how this is going to kill you. And still, they take it and they do it.
Yeah, they got a brand on the cigarettes.
If that isn't, an exhibition of a person misusing his independence, what is? So it's a little tiny example, but if you apply the principle to the whole universal situation, this is how it is that the individual soul can become so convinced against his own self-interest.
And Krishna will let you have whatever you want.
Yes. At your own risk. Text 4. In the beginning, I think we're going to start right here. This is a very good time. This is a good stopping place. We're an hour into it. Exactly an hour into it. Hare Krishna. We're used to 5 hours, so we want to keep going, but this is the daily reading every day, so...
This section is just nectar.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to stop here, and I apologize for those of you out there in cyberspace who weren't actually able to be live and ask questions directly to me, but you can do it in our next live session. We're going to work hard to try to get the live sessions working again starting tomorrow. It may take a day or two, from what I understand from talking to others, but that's the way it is right now. So please forgive us, and watch at your convenience, make notes, write down your questions if you have them, and then we'll talk about them in the next live session. And so for now, what we'll do is we'll take reflections or questions or whatever from those in the room with me. That's Nandasuna Prabhu from Denver, and Dravida, who is a soul wandering, looking for his Giridhari Prabhu, who's kind of wandering around, trying to find his permanent abode in the spiritual world of ISKCON, and Bhaktamat, our techie, the newest brahmachari in the block. Okay? So, who's first? If anybody. Nandasuno has a reflection.
Hare Krishna.
Hare.
So Bhakti Matt just said this section is nectar, and I agree with that. And I was just talking to Nagar Kirtan Prabhu today about this word amrita, which means nectar in Sanskrit, but it also means immortality. And mrityu means death, and means canceling that out. So we're hearing this thing, and that's nectar, like Bhakti Matt said, and it's giving us such a sense of relief, especially these sections that are telling us directly that you're not your body, that Brahma is creating these coverings that are allowing you to forget your real identity, things like that. So but just hearing it, it brings such a sense of relief, and it is amrita, or
Yes.
something that takes away that sense of
Yes.
death.
Yes. Very nice. Thank you so much. Very nice. And and therefore, it's giving us relief because it's giving us a kind of vision of how it is we can get out of this place, or out of this illusion, or out of this suffering. And that's why Brahma felt bad when he first created the conditions which allow the soul to think they're separate from Krishna, which means that our suffering is actually coming only from forgetting Krishna. So when you remember Krishna, actually remember Krishna, and Krishna says tatvadaha, in truth, not just imagination, then you become relieved from suffering. Which is a pretty good reason, actually, for thinking about Krishna. And there's even higher reasons, which we'll hear later on, and we've already heard about them in different ways, but to develop love for Krishna. We're hearing things that will increase the depth of our understanding of who Krishna is, so that our depth of attraction and affection and ultimately pure love will be revived in our heart. The purpose of these knowledge, and it's why we're thinking, wow, that is so wonderful. But actually, that's just the beginning. The awe, the appreciation, the titillation of our spiritual intelligence, and the pleasure that comes from it is just a little hint of what's to come if we keep going. So it's meant to encourage us and meant to give us momentum and a thrust of a rationalization or a reason for going further and for continuing to go further until we find out who we are with Krishna and can see Krishna face to face. Now we're seeing Krishna, we're always seeing Krishna. But we're just seeing a little, seeing from such a distance, we can't even imagine how far away Krishna is. But he's right with us at the same time. Therefore we can feel this, we can jnana bhavanamcha. Therefore it's describing here how we can remember and we forget by the grace of Krishna. We can't even forget Krishna without his mercy, without his grace. So how dependent are we? Here's a reflection from Bhakti Matt.
Really, really fast. When you were describing the foam, the body of Krishna and the size of everything, it made me realize that Krishna is directing everything, including what goes on with me personally. It's the same as me knowing personally what's happening with every single cell in my body, individually.
That's God. And the body you're talking about is the whole universe.
Yeah.
Or not just this universe, the whole cosmic manifestation.
Yeah.
But beyond that, Krishna, so you can visualize you can visualize in that way that Krishna's form is bigger than anything, because he's described to be, in the Bhagavad Gita, bigger than the biggest and smaller than the smallest. You see? So he has got a form which is, it's not that his form is, well, it is, and his expansions of his forms, but he also has a form that is like a normal size form. And he comes to the material world and sometimes exhibits it. So therefore, the cosmic manifestation is considered to be the external body of the Lord, which is only an imagination. He doesn't have an external body. It's just a way of our meditation. When you meditate on this cosmic manifestation in the way that we're doing now, and in second canto it gave even more ways of meditating on it that connect with personal features of a body, like the hairs on the head, the clouds are the hairs on the head, the trees and vegetation are the hairs of his body, the veins, rivers and streams are like veins in the body. So that gives us a chance to, think in terms of the universal body, in terms of personal form. But it's actually an imagination. It's not that if you look, from at a distance of this universe and you see Krishna standing like this, It's not like that. We've already heard, from direct realization of Brahma, who's seeing it for himself, what it looks like. And Prabhupada describes it in purport, elaborates. You look at a distance and you see a bunch of foam bubbles, clustered together in the spiritual sky, covering the spiritual sky. And in that spiritual sky, this is just a little part of the spiritual sky, being covered by this cloud. But beyond that, there are planets in the spiritual sky, and the dimensions of those planets are unlimited. You can't conceive of them. Yes, Giridhari Prabhu has some reflection.
I was reflecting on the point you said about how this should expand our consciousness.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about that. I think that's a common phrase, like this will expands your consciousness, or you've had some experience that expands your consciousness. And I was thinking how tangible this is, like hearing about like how large the coverings are of the universe, and how there's unlimited universes, and then there's all the universes come from Mahavishnu, and then Krishna is the source of Mahavishnu. It's just like we're thinking so small. We're thinking like just what's in front of us, what sense objects we can gratify our senses with, and everything revolves around us, and then our mind's so disturbed about what's going on in this like small little portion of reality. But then hearing the Bhagavatam expands us beyond this little tiny little network of sufferings.
And then when we try to extend our senses through telescopes, or shrink our senses to see things smaller through microscopes, what are we looking at? We're looking at something that appears from the transcendental position to be like an atom. We're inside this atom looking at and trying to understand that, but just the coverings of the universe make that little space, outer space, like an atom compared to the coverings.
But it's also, when you're small enough, it's infinitely big.
Well, that's another. Bhaktimat just said it's actually, if you go small enough, it gets infinitely big, and that's a fact. And the reason is because Krishna is in full in every atom of the universe. So what that means is, practically, that he's infinite dimensional. He's living in an infinite dimensional world. We calculate, I heard Sariputta analyze this, because Sariputta was a genius mathematician, and he analyzed, when we think of in terms of time and space, we're talking about space now, we measure things in terms of distance. I'm so far away from you because there's certain numbers of points in between us. But Krishna is inside each point in full. Krishna means everything. So that means all the creations are inside each point in the universe. And therefore there's no distance between him and anything else. So this is where the mystic powers are coming from according to the 11th canto. When we get to the 11th canto, then we'll find out that we get the mystic potencies by meditating on aspects of Krishna and his potencies perfectly. You meditate on how Krishna is all pervasive, perfectly, and you can reach your hand out and pick a pomegranate from Afghanistan. It's not that everything shrinks down. You're just given that facility, that it comes closer to you and you're there to be able to pick it.
Yeah.
But people who are in materialistic concept, thinking that the hand has to stretch and stretch and stretch and stretch and go.
Yeah, because even in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada describes yogis that can just...
Matt says that in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says there are yogis who can touch the moon with their hand. That's exactly right. So this is how it works. So it takes some time to digest this, to process it, because we're very tiny, and our capacity is very tiny. So the Bhagavatam is giving us an unbelievable and inconceivably fortunate ability to perceive what's going on in this world by hearing. Om Jnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Therefore we worship Guru, we worship Prabhupada as our founder Acharya, our eternal Shiksha Guru for everyone, including all of you who have other spiritual masters. So we do that because we're getting the truth. And our eyes are opening and our consciousness is expanding as a result of hearing in the parampara system. That's why you can't be a guru unless you've heard from the parampara system from one who is actually fully realized and agree not to change it. Not to add, not to subtract, not to try to amplify according to what you think is this or you think is that. And that's how you get real knowledge. Okay, we're going to stop there for tonight. It's almost 8 o'clock, and we got to get rest and get ready tomorrow. Somehow or other we made it through another day. And fortunate are those who have an opportunity to hear Srimad Bhagavatam every day, systematically like this. So we should count ourselves among the most fortunate persons in the universe, and never ever get depressed or unhappy about anything, or bewildered about anything, because anything the material energy can put in front of you, you can understand in proper perspective by remembering the Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bo.